All right, let's dive into Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Oh, this one's incredible.
Yeah, have you read it?
I have. It's pretty amazing.
It really is, and we're going to get
Yeah,
into
like heavy though.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic.
For sure.
But it's about how to find hope and purpose in like the darkest of places,
Yeah.
like literally Nazi concentration camps.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's hard to wrap your head around. It's hard to even fathom.
And what's interesting is that he was a psychiatrist,
Right.
Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
And he uses his experiences to really illustrate the point that like there's the ability to find meaning even in the face of
Yes.
unimaginable suffering.
Yes.
It's
That's
truly
unimaginable.
unimaginable, yeah.
And it was originally titled,
From death camp to existentialism.
yeah, I mean, right there.
There you go.
The book is divided into two parts.
Okay.
The first part is his firsthand account of what it was like to be in a camp.
Mhm.
And then the second part is his explanation of logotherapy. But before we get into all of that,
Okay.
I just have to share this one little detail that just like burned into my brain when I was reading it.
Okay.
He was marching to a work site one morning and he describes just like this beautiful sunrise.
Wow.
And I'm just like trying to imagine being in that situation.
Yeah.
And even being able to recognize beauty.
Right.
It just, I don't know, it just really stuck with me.
Yeah.
So, okay, so the prisoners arrive at Auschwitz, and they really have no idea
They're clueless.
what's about to happen to them.
Right.
It's this stark contrast between their illusions and, like, the brutal reality.
And he calls that the delusion of reprieve.
Okay.
So it's like this defense mechanism where your mind is not actually letting in the full weight of what's happening.
Right.
So they're clinging to hope in a way,
Wow.
even as they're
Wow.
facing extermination.
I was like, you just can't handle that much at once. And he gives this chilling example of a prisoner who is just like fixated on the red cheeks and round faces of the SS guards.
Oh, wow.
It's almost like he's looking for something normal
Yeah.
in this totally grotesque environment.
Yeah.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
And Frankl goes on to talk about like the three phases of the prisoner's psychological reactions to being in the camp.
Okay.
Initially, there's shock, like we were just talking about, and that delusion,
Right.
where they just don't really grasp the reality of what's happening.
And then as they start to grasp that reality,
Right.
apathy and emotional blunting
Yeah.
sets in.
Yeah.
It's almost like a survival mechanism.
Right. You have to shut down emotionally.
Yeah, like he actually talks about a prisoner who was working,
Right.
and there's a dead body right near his workspace.
Oh, gosh.
And he's totally numb to it.
Wow.
Doesn't even faze him.
Yeah. It's like that's how you survive. You just shut down.
It's a way to cope, yeah.
So then he talks about this third phase, which is really disturbing. It's depersonalization.
Right.
They're reduced to numbers. They're stripped of their individuality.
Yeah.
He talks about the beatings that were just constant, often for no reason at all.
Just because.
It's just heartbreaking to think about the dehumanization.
Yeah, it's unimaginable.
It really is.
Yeah.
But then, I think back to that prisoner who's fixated on the guards' faces. He's not just passively observing. He's searching for something.
Right.
He's searching for a glimmer of humanity.
Right.
Some reminder of the world outside the barbed wire.
Yeah.
And that tiny act of observation
Right.
is an act of resistance.
Yes.
He's choosing to focus on something that gives you hope.
Right.
Something that connects him to something beyond that immediate horror.
Yeah.
And Frankl saw this in other prisoners too.
Yeah.
He saw them finding meaning in small things.
Right. Like what?
Like having a conversation about food, or sharing a memory of a loved one, or a brief glimpse of like beauty in nature.
Yeah.
It's like they were clinging to these tiny sparks of meaning
Yes.
to hold on to their humanity.
Exactly.
And then this other example he gives is a prisoner with a dislocated hip.
Oh, wow.
And this prisoner was glad to be assigned work
Why?
because it meant that he wouldn't be selected for extermination.
Oh, right.
So he's finding purpose in work,
right.
even though he's in agonizing pain.
Wow.
It's just incredible.
Yeah, it's fueling that resilience,
It really is.
that survival instinct.
And that all ties back to logotherapy,
Okay.
which is the idea that we all have this innate drive to find meaning in life.
It's not about avoiding suffering or pretending that everything's okay.
Right.
It's about finding a reason to keep going.
Yeah.
Even when things are incredibly tough.
Yeah.
Even when things are unimaginable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's heavy stuff, but I think we're just getting started.
Let's get into it.
Yeah. So this well to meaning, that's what logotherapy is all about.
Yeah, it's like this drive inside us to find meaning and purpose in our lives.
Okay, so it's not about like avoiding suffering
Right.
or pretending that everything's perfect,
I know, not right.
but finding a reason to keep going
Exactly.
even when things are really hard.
Yeah, even in the face of that suffering.
Frankl uses the term, what is it, existential frustration?
Yeah, existential frustration.
To describe that feeling of emptiness, that lack of direction.
It's like you don't know what you're doing here.
Right.
You know, you have all these choices, but you're not really sure what the point of any of it is.
It's like having all the ingredients but no recipe.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got the freedom, the possibilities, but without a clear why, it can all feel pretty meaningless.
Exactly. And that feeling of meaninglessness, that can lead to a lot of problems.
Like what?
Well, anxiety, depression.
Okay.
And Frankl talks about these things called neurogenic neuroses.
Neurogenic neuroses.
Yeah, they're basically existential anxieties.
Oh.
Worries about, our place in the universe.
Right.
Whether our lives really matter, that kind of thing.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Oh, absolutely.
We all have those moments where we're just like, what's the point of all this? Like, what am I even doing here?
And it makes sense in a way.
Yeah.
Because in modern society, we have so many choices.
Right.
We're bombarded with messages about success and happiness, but we often lack that deeper sense of purpose.
Okay, so how do we combat this?
Well, there's no easy answer.
Right.
Frankl didn't believe in a one-size-fits-all solution. He believed that meaning is unique to each individual.
Okay.
And that it's not something we find, but something we create.
So it's not out there waiting for us.
Right.
We have to actively shape it.
Through our choices, our actions.
Okay, I like that.
And he talked about 3 main avenues for creating meaning.
Okay, what are they?
First, through our work. Second, through our relationships. And third, through our attitude towards suffering.
Work, relationships, and suffering.
Yeah, those are the big ones.
Okay, so let's start with work.
Okay, so when we talk about work, we're not just talking about, having a fancy job or making a lot of money.
Right.
It's about finding something that you're passionate about.
Okay.
That uses your talents, that allows you to contribute to the world in a meaningful way.
So it could be volunteering
Oh,
or pursuing a creative hobby
absolutely.
or even starting a business that solves a problem you care about.
Exactly. It's about finding something that makes you feel like you're making a difference.
It gives you that sense of purpose.
Right, that sense of accomplishment.
Okay, what about relationships?
Well, with relationships, it's not just about, hanging out with people you like.
Okay.
It's about cultivating deep, meaningful connections.
Right.
It's about giving and receiving love, supporting others, being part of a community.
Yeah, it's about those connections that remind us that we're not alone in this crazy world.
Exactly.
All right, and then there's suffering.
Yeah, this one's tough.
This is where Frankl's experiences in the camps really hit home.
Yeah, because he saw firsthand how people found meaning even in the most horrific circumstances.
It's not about glorifying suffering, right?
No, not at all.
Or pretending it's not painful.
It's about recognizing that suffering is a part of life and that even in the darkest of times, we have the power to choose how we respond.
To find meaning in the midst of pain.
Exactly.
He gives the example of that elderly doctor who lost his wife.
Oh, yeah.
And he found meaning in honoring her memory and continuing to live a life that was true to their shared values.
It's about turning your pain into something that serves a purpose.
That helps you grow.
That makes you stronger.
So we've got these 3 avenues: work, relationships, suffering.
Yeah.
But how do we actually put this into practice?
Well, that's where logotherapy comes in as a therapeutic approach.
So it's not just a philosophy.
No.
It's a practical method.
Exactly. It's about helping people find meaning in their lives.
So unlike some other forms of therapy that focus on the past or trying to change our feelings directly,
Right.
logotherapy focuses on finding meaning in the present and the future.
It's about empowering people to take responsibility for their lives.
To make choices that align with their values.
Exactly.
And Frankl developed these specific techniques
Oh, yeah, like what?
like de-reflection
De-reflection.
and paradoxical intention.
Paradoxical intention. Those are good ones.
Yeah, can you remind us how those work?
So de-reflection basically involves shifting your attention away from yourself
Okay.
and towards something more meaningful.
Get out of your own head.
Exactly.
Focus on something bigger than yourself.
So, for example, if someone is struggling with social anxiety, a logotherapist might encourage them to, volunteer,
Okay.
help others, instead of dwelling on their own fears and insecurities.
So it's like, take the focus off of you.
Right. Put it on something external. A
Exactly.
paradoxical intention.
That one involves confronting your fears in a humorous way.
In a humorous way.
Yeah, to break that cycle of anxiety.
Okay.
So, like, if someone's afraid of public speaking, the therapist might encourage them to intentionally try to make the audience laugh.
So tell a bad joke on purpose.
Yeah, it sounds counterintuitive,
It does.
but it can be really effective because
Yeah.
by intentionally doing the thing you're afraid of
Right.
and doing it in a humorous way, you kind of take away the power of that fear.
It's like, if you're going to fall, might as well make it a funny fall.
Exactly.
So both of these techniques, they emphasize action,
Right.
choosing to engage with life,
Even when it's hard.
even when you're afraid.
Exactly.
So instead of overthinking and analyzing, logotherapy is about taking action,
Making choices that align with your values.
recognizing that even though we can't control everything,
Right.
we can choose how we respond.
And find meaning
Even when things are really tough.
even in the face of suffering.
That's pretty powerful stuff.
It is. It really is.
I mean, it's wild to think that telling a bad joke on purpose can actually help you deal with anxiety.
Yeah. The mind is a powerful thing.
It really is.
It can shape our experience even in really hard situations.
So all this kind of brings us to this idea of self-transcendence.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
What does that even mean, self-transcendence?
Okay, so self-transcendence, it's about like moving beyond yourself,
Okay.
connecting to something bigger,
Okay.
whether it's through relationships, work, a spiritual practice,
Okay.
even just appreciating like nature.
Okay.
It's about realizing you're part of something bigger,
You know, when I think of like self-transcendence, I used to think of like, I don't know,
like monks on a mountaintop.
yeah, monks meditating on a mountaintop.
Yeah.
But what you're describing makes it seem a lot more like,
It's more accessible
yeah.
than that. It doesn't have to be this big, grand thing.
So like if I volunteer at an animal shelter,
yeah.
or really just try to listen to a friend who's having a tough time,
Yeah, absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
self-transcendence.
It's about shifting that focus outward, away from yourself,
Yeah.
and towards something that gives you purpose.
And Frankl saw that in the Pamps too, right?
Oh, for sure.
Those prisoners who could find meaning
Yeah.
even in those horrific circumstances.
They were often the ones who were helping others.
Right.
Or connecting to something bigger than themselves.
It's inspiring
It is.
and a little humbling
Yeah.
thinking about that level of resilience.
A reminder that even in the darkest times, we can find light
Yeah.
and create meaning.
I feel like we've only scratched the surface here.
Yeah, Man's Search for Meaning is a deep book.
There's so much to unpack.
It really makes you think.
I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that we always have a choice. Even when we're suffering, we can choose our attitude.
And find meaning.
It's a powerful message.
It really is.
It gives me hope.
Me too.
Well, I hope everyone listening will pick up Man's Search for Meaning.
It's a must read.
It really is.
It'll challenge you.
Yeah.
It'll make you think.
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll inspire you.
To find your own meaning.
Exactly.
All right, that's our deep dive into Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
We'll see you next time.